today's DNC about saving New York trees. It's not talking about canal. I know, I'm here. And
I saw some of the same people.
but these aren't New York trees. I don't know what are. I thought
Right, that one goes there.
New York just can't see the man.
Do you by chance have anybody with a backup phone? Your wife got one? I got one. I was so annoyed about a guy here. Oh well. Okay, well, don't do it continuously. Just do it selectively.
Hello?
Welcome everybody. My name's Elizabeth Ogchie and thank you so much for coming out on a cold day. This is a really important issue and I'm glad you're here. On November 20th, 3 strangers were outraged by the project overview that the Canal Corporation presented at their open house in Brighton. Before we left, we had thrust emails into each other's hands. Ginny Mayer, Jill Miller, and I became a team. In 3 weeks since that open house Thanksgiving week, we have written letters, made phone calls, attended town board meetings, put up a Facebook page that in 1 week has garnered 400 members. Woo! We drove west of here to see the devastation firsthand. Found a world-renowned geotechnical engineer who specializes in bioslope stabilization. We wrote the president of the Power Authority and have filed a Freedom of Information request. You get the idea. We've been pretty busy. Thank you. Thank you. We're here today because we want the Power Authority to hear us loud and clear when we say from all of us that they must come to a halt on the clear cutting of the canal until an impact study can be done. The tree-lined canal path is part and parcel of the quality of life we all cherish here. Ginny, I'd like you to say a little bit about what you're interested in, and then we'll have a word from Jill.
Okay, just real quick. So my interest, I teach science, and I work with students who are learning science, and I really want them to understand the evidence for any action that we take. So when I saw the Canal Corporation's plan, I looked at their evidence, and it's really not that strong that taking down trees is the right move for safety. It is true that if we want zero risk for vegetation causing damage to the canal embankment, we should remove all of the vegetation. But that's not really in the interest of everybody else who uses the trail, and it also doesn't reflect the actual danger to the neighbors as far as the science is concerned. So I followed up on the science end, and I saw that the case was not that strong. I asked them to stop so that we could have a broader discussion about the science and the other values of the trees along the canal, and we haven't gotten any response for them. So we really want your support in helping us asking the Canal Corporation to stop for now so that we can have a broader public discussion with everybody's interests on the table.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Jenny's been a wonderful lead on finding some of the scientific background for being able to refute the claims that are very broad and not completely accurate in some of the canal and FEMA information that was presented on November 20th. We have been in touch with the Power Authority. They wrote back. They made a claim about safety being much more important than aesthetics. I thought that was a little bit dismissive. We have responded to them, and we Chris, president of the MCC, is a member of the board of trustees for the Power Authority, and she has been a conduit of information, and we were able to get a response back from them. I sent another note in and requested that they look harder again at the science. So we're not wanting to endanger any of the homes around this area. What we are wanting to do is have a fair look at the science, at which approaches make sense given the strong interest in maintaining the canal as a tourist and recreation center. So thank you.
I'd like to say this isn't my first rodeo, but it is. This morning I received a message from the town supervisor, Bill Maley, who wanted to extend his apologies. He really wanted to be here, but he's out of town with family. But he has a really great letter on our Facebook page. So our first speaker today is someone I'm really pleased to present. Sandy Frankel was the town supervisor of Brighton for 20 years. To have you here. And
thank you. I'm going to forego this little footstool because I'm afraid I'll fall off. But I do want to say, as we begin, I do want to say, let's warm up by making our voices heard loudly and clearly here on the Canal Trail today and tomorrow in Albany. We have to get the word out to say that this is not acceptable. The reason is that we have a treasure here, resource for commercial transportation on the waterway, and has morphed into an important resource for tourism, which is important to our economy, and recreation for our physical health and mental well-being. Thousands of people enjoy the canal one way or another during the year that the canal waterway is open, and on the trail throughout the year. You see people enjoying the beautiful foliage in the fall, enjoying the shade that the trees provide, the animal habitat that's here. There are so many aspects that warrant careful consideration. The plan to clear cut the trees and remove the underbrush from the canal trail embankment is really problematic because it relied on outdated information, and it also did not include significant public input in a formal environmental review process, which is so essential for any public process. And I know about this because, as you heard, I was a leader in helping our community in Brighton with the townwide park system, which did require an environmental review, and in other development proposals, which also required the state-required environmental review that includes public input, public hearings, and facts to support the final decisions and then mitigations to the extent that they're needing. So clear cutting is not a sound plan. It may be, just as we all agree, that public safety is critical. It may be that selective tree removal may be warranted in particular spots, but not clear cutting all of the trees, because we know that trees do in fact help to stabilize steep slopes. We know that trees are important, trees and underbrush are important for habitat for animals. We know that trees help to cool the area, and that's important for the users of the canal and the canal trail in the summer. And we also know that trees are important in taking up carbon dioxide. And if grass is planted, that will increase the cost of maintenance for the Canal Corporation. And it also, with mowing, which they say they'll do, will add carbon to our air. And it'll be counterproductive, opposite to the benefits that trees bring. So today we're here because we're calling on the state to stop the clear cutting of the canal trail and to ask them, demand from them that they stop the process. They do have contracts, but contracts are not irreversible. This is not a fait accompli. The fact of the matter is that you can amend a contract, you can modify a plan. And that's what we really want the Canal Corporation and the Power Authority to do. The Power Authority has a history, understandably, of cutting down trees and trimming trees back from the power lines because we don't want to have power outages to the extent that happens during ice storms and other severe windstorms. But the Canal Corporation has a different mission, and that mission is to focus on the preservation of the beauty and the safety of this treasure. So let's all say together, what do we want? Stop the clear cutting. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Stop the clear cutting. When do we want it? Now. Thank you, and next speaker.
Thank you so much, Sandy. 1 week ago, Ginny, Jill, and I were having our first face-to-face meeting at the Pittsford Library. One of the agendas on our list was to contact the town supervisors. As we walked out, we spotted Bill Smith, and we made a beeline back into the building. He was gracious enough to say, "Oh, excuse me, do you need to use this room?" And we said, "No, actually, we're here to ambush you." Bill, thanks so much for being here today.
And a happy ambushing it was. And I had a phone call from my counterpart in Parrington, Supervisor Mike Barker, who wanted very badly to be here to support this cause today. As we speak and stand here now, he is trapped in the airport in Orlando, and all his flights were terribly messed up because of the snow on the East Coast, a bit south of us. But I'm happy that Council Member Peg Havens from the Parrington Town Board is here with us today. Thank you, Peg, for coming. I was going to start out in a somewhat different way, but I'm inspired by one of the signs that I see this morning. And you're holding it right there. Canal Corporation, there is never only one way to solve a problem. And that's true enough. But what it really got me thinking about was, is there a problem here that requires solving at all? I don't believe that the Canal Corporation or the Power Authority have made that case. Now, I was at the public session that was held on November 20th. The arguments put forward by the Power Authority for what they propose to do on the canal are, to put it charitably, underwhelming. Certainly, they are massively underwhelming given the consequences and the clear detriment and detriments that would accrue from the tree cutting that they now propose. And I'm delighted by Sandy Frankel's description of how important this canal is as a resource and what's at risk on the canal itself by what's being proposed to be done to the trees. But you know, it's so much more than just the canal. It's not just the canal, it's the aesthetic aspect of our community. And I can tell you that in both Parrington and in Pittsford, as a result of a great deal of public engagement and planning that has produced our respective comprehensive plans, which are then translated into our zoning laws, an actual statement of policy deriving from public support. One of the things we call for, is to have trees and undeveloped property along major corridors and to be seen from major corridors. This is an important development tool so that you can accommodate development while still preserving a major aspect of the aesthetic character of our community. And I can tell you that both in Parenton and in Pittsford, I can tell you exactly what the area will be affected. This is going to affect, for the worse, the way the entire area looks as you drive through. One of the major gateways into our village in Pittsford is going to be aesthetically compromised because of this. There are other ways that this is going to affect people. And again, I'll refer to a situation we have over in Pittsford. We have houses all along Marsh Road. Right now, they look out over woodland, the woods and the embankment of the canal. If what is proposed is done, they will look over a massive earthen dam. Now, what's that going to do to the property values there? What's that going to do to the property values of the adjacent neighborhoods there? So, yes, it's very, very much and immediately about what happens along the canal path. But you see, there's so much more. There's so much more that's involved. And that's why I was not convinced. I think the Power Authority simply has to make a much better case. Now, I can tell you that as a result of some of the work that Supervisor Barker and I have done to try and get in touch with the decision makers at the Power Authority, we have a commitment from them. I just had the call on Friday morning that the person in charge of the canal at the New York State Power Authority is coming out here for a meeting with me and Supervisor Barker and Mayor Fritz May of Fairport before they're going to do anything. And we need to use that. This is not going to be just they're giving us information or telling us yet again what they want to do. I told them exactly what the concerns were. I told them exactly what my big issue is, which they have not met the threshold of reasoning as to why this needs to be done at all. And until we have that, we really can't support this project. I will note that at the November 20th meeting, you walked in. What was front and center a big picture of? It was a picture of the flooding caused by the breach of the embankment in 1974. Well, you know what, folks? The Great Embankment has been breached 3 times, in 1911, in 1912, and in 1974. Trees had nothing to do with it any time. In each case, it was a result of work, construction work being done either on the embankment itself or underneath the embankment, as was the case in 1974. Trees seem to have little to do with it. So they have a lot of, the Power Authority has a lot of explaining to do before they can convince, I think, most reasonable people that this step is necessary. And you're helping those of us who are in elected positions to hold their feet to the fire is a tremendous help. And I would just repeat what Sandy said. One of the important things to do is not just us as elected officials, but for you as residents to get in touch with the Power Authority directly and make your views known to them. And the more of that we have, the better the prospects for success for what we want to accomplish here. Thank you so much for coming out today.
When is your meeting? When is your meeting with them?
The meeting will be at the Pittsford Community Library Building in the Fisher Room at 6 o'clock on Monday, December 18th.
No, that's a different meeting.
Oh.
Yeah, let me. I have set up with Supervisor Barker a community meeting on this subject for Monday the 18th in the Fisher Room of the Pittsford Community Library. That is not the meeting I was referring to earlier with the 2 supervisors and Mayor May. That is subject to being scheduled, but it's going to happen in the next week or so.
Thank you.
The Power Authority also is having their board meeting on Wednesday, the Board of Trustees meeting on Wednesday the 13th. So contacting Wednesday the 13th. Wednesday the 13th. Contacting them and, in particular, the head of the Power Authority and also the head of the Canal Corporation before that meeting will help with us.
Can we put those phone numbers on the Facebook page?
Absolutely. When I called the Sierra Club, I felt like no one was listening to our cause yet, but the Sierra Club understood exactly where we were coming from. A walk along a beautiful waterway under a canopy of trees is that is environmentally rich is of immense value, and one of the reasons we choose to live where we live. Replacing trees and vegetation with mowed grass hills demonstrates intensely poor custodianship. Peter Debs, thank you for being here and speaking for Sierra Club today.
Thank you very much. I have to say that all my life I've been a naturalist. I grew up next to a forest, Cobbs Hill at Park, the Washington Grove. I even led eco-tours for 20 years, so nature is deeply connected to me. It's where I find a lot of spiritual connection. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming here today on fairly short notice to help with this rally and challenging the clear cutting of the canal. The Rochester Regional Group of the Sierra Club was notified about the proposal to clear out the banks of the canal only a couple of weeks ago, and we realized that although this is a historic and natural landmark in our community, the way it was constructed and the reasons were to facilitate transportation of materials and agricultural products and produce at a time when roads were poor and movement slow. We all know that with few exceptions, the canal is no longer used this way. Barges are no longer pulled along towpaths by mules. The canal corridor no longer has to maintain those paths on both sides. Instead, the canal has transformed to a corridor through the state that is predominantly used for recreation and exercise. Let me pause here just a minute to check something out. How many of you regularly use the canal corridor at least several times a year? Raise your hands. How many of you use it at least once a week? How about twice a week? All right. Well, if just in this small group here we were to multiply that over the number of days of a year, this gives us a sense of how much this resource gets used. Now, let's see. Though I live several miles from the canal, I ride my bicycle along a stretch that goes from East Henrietta Road all the way down to Winton, sometimes several times a week. And along my rides, here's what I see. Pleasure boating with yachts. A few, not very many, all through the year. Motorboats, rarely. Occasional tour boats carrying numbers of people. I see people learning whitewater skills in kayaks at a spillway. Recreational exercise with dozens of walkers, bicyclists, joggers, and then there's competition rowing with U of R and other schools. I see parents with strollers and babies. I see nature lovers and birders enjoying the wildlife. I'm a birder, and I've noted, whoops, looks like, yeah. I've noted a variety of birds along the canal corridor that includes red-tailed hawks, warblers, orioles, song sparrows, mockingbirds, phoebe flycatchers, and many more, especially during migration. I've also seen evidence of deer, chipmunks, squirrels, woodchucks, raccoons, rabbits, muskrats, moles and voles, garter snakes, toads, and chorus frogs, which are becoming rare in our area. This diversity of wildlife is possible because of the diversity of the habitat along the canal. There are wooded areas, shrubs, and tall grassy areas. These are essential to maintain this diversity of wildlife. People using the canal enjoy the shade of trees in the hot summer months, the attractive scenery, which is enhanced by the pleasing variety of vegetation, and the peace and tranquility of natural areas. This raises a very important point. Many areas along the canal corridor have, since it's been constructed, become urban or residential. And this has led to the loss of once productive farms, woodlots, forests, and old fields. These natural areas have also become, subsequently, isolated from each other. The result is that the canal now provides a valuable and in some places an essential corridor for a wildlife movement between natural areas and also natural habitat to sustain their populations. It's important not to destroy these critical tree and shrub borders except where there is any substantial risk. The Sierra Club began as an organization dedicated to getting people out to enjoy and appreciate the wild places in our country. and thus to preserve wild places for future generations. While the canal is not a wilderness, it is an important place, especially for urban folks, to connect with the nature and enjoy it. Otherwise, how will they believe we should spend lots of money to preserve those places? So the clear-cutting the canal will needlessly destroy this important resource for the public and must be halted. Elizabeth has made contact with an expert engineer whose life work has been maintenance of corridors such as this, and he has submitted testimony that clear-cutting being proposed by the Power Authority is not necessary in most places. Let's thank Elizabeth and her colleagues for the effort they've made in alerting to this. It takes a lot of time and energy to organize something like this. And if we're going to make a difference, we need all of your help. That's why there's a clipboard going around that you should sign in. And that way you can be notified of future events. So, will you help us stop this needless destruction of our environment?
Yes!
Let me hear that again.
Yes!
There's some crows way over there. Let them hear it.
Yes!
Okay, please be sure to sign up and give us your contact info so we can stop this.
Thank you, Peter. That was wonderful. I'm the only one that's up here. No one knows better how the quality of life will change more than the homeowners who are living directly on the canal. I've been listening to these stories for 2 weeks, and believe me, it's heartbreaking. So I'd like to present a homeowner who is going to talk about it in his own words.
First of all, thank you, Elizabeth, for organizing all this. I appreciate all the local officials that have attended today, and thank you to all of you who have weathered this cold day to come out and put together this support. So we thank you. On behalf of my family and my neighbors who I've been speaking with, I've got 14 years on the property here right on the canal. When I first moved in and speaking with my neighbors and permits from other folks that they got with the Canal Authority, one of the number one instructions they gave out was, do not disturb the embankment. That means do not cut down the trees, do not disturb the embankment, do not remove trees from the embankment. The theory behind that was this is fortifying and enriching the embankment for the safety of the public. So at that November 20th meeting, I brought that up and they said they were misinformed and misled and that was incorrect and to ignore that. So now I'm wondering what they're proposing, is that incorrect and is that misleading? So I really am here for the safety of the public, but as a homeowner that's right on the canal, obviously I don't want my house to be washed away, but I really honestly don't know what to believe. And I believe that these trees are helping us. I am an engineer, but I'm not an environmental engineer, but it just seems to make sense that what they're proposing and how quick they're going about this, they're really trying to push this through too quickly. And one last example, the town of Perrington, when they propose something that they're going to do, they have multiple meetings about what it is they're proposing and informative meetings to the whole town. For example, the sewers that are going in, or when they did the Jefferson Avenue work, the whole community had input, say, and feedback on it, and they listened, and I don't feel that's happening today. So again, thank you for all coming out and weathering the storm in this cold weather. Hopefully our voice can be said and heard. Thank you.
So much for your words. Well, I know you guys are all passionate about this because why else would you be standing in the cold? We want to remind you to join the town supervisors for that December 18th meeting at the Pittsford Library. It's at 6 o'clock and they have heat. We urge you to continue to contact our state representatives. Rich Funke is the Senate chairman of the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Committee, and even if he isn't your senator, please contact him about this. The governor is also someone you should be contacting, and I'll tell you there's two ways to do it. Some people really don't want their names attached to this because they're afraid of reprisals from the Canal Corp. in which case you can call the governor. They will only take your phone call by zip code. They don't take your name. If you go to the governor's website, you can put down your name and all pertinent information, and that will be recorded. Numbers count. We are gaining more and more information by the day, but it won't mean a thing if we can't stop the Power Authority long enough to review the data. Thank you so much for being here. Do you have anything else you want to say?
If people aren't on the Facebook page, just remind them.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So anybody who hasn't been on the Facebook page, it's called Stop the Canal Clear Cut. And we will post all of these phone numbers and links so that you can make contact. Thank you so much for coming, everybody.